Hi everybody, I'm Bill Sanders and this is Watch Art Sci, the art and science of watch collection. Today what I want to talk about are several watches that I think are good buys. Now, I had part one was a few weeks ago, and this is part two. There may be a part three and four. And these are watches that I ran into, and originally I was looking for a new watch that for one reason or the other, the price had really dropped from the new price. In fact, what I was looking for were brand new 2018 watches that were available, but not at the list price, far below the list price. But then I found all kinds of watches that I liked that were available, but were, for the most part, I think all of them are new or what they call condition zero, which is the same as new. Some brands have bigger drops than others. Now, a lot of people say, well, they think that retaining the value of a watch is important. By that, if they mean what the list price is, these watches are the opposite of that. On the other hand, if what we really mean is that we can get a watch at a much reduced price and we buy it at the reduced price, when comes time to sell it or swap it, you've already taken the hit on it, and so you're already at a lower rate. So let's take a look at the watches. Now, this first one is Arnold & Son. It's called the Arnold & Son TBR, and I don't think they're making it anymore. I just like the looks of it. I like the serpent hand that they have on the what's called the hand date it's like on 12 right now, and it's that little squiggly line, and then you have a great big arrow for the seconds, and then you have the Roman numerals for the hours and minutes. Now, I was told by somebody, he said, well, these watches, they didn't like them very much because he said that they had problems with the movement. And they might. I don't know. Here's what I do know. And there may have been some changes, and since these changes have occurred, the movement is no longer a problem, or they solve the problem with the same movement company. A few years ago, Citizen, which is a big Japanese Citizen holding company, purchased Arnold & Son. Okay, Arnold & Son were, I think it's an old English watchmaker, but for a number of years now, they've been in La Chaux de Fonds in Switzerland, so they're a Swiss company. And, well, anyways, Citizen bought them. They also bought a movement company called Girard-Perregaux. Now, that's a company I'm very interested in because their whole history is sort of started off with a guy having to go to jail named, I think his name was Jean-Pierre Jacquet. And he sort of started it. He made some interesting movements. The one that is in this particular watch he made. So that was sort of an interesting one. And then they wanted to totally separate themselves from Jacquet, so they came to be known as Girard-Perregaux. And they make movements very much in the same way that Vaucher and ETA make movements, and then they sell them to other companies. Okay, now some of the movements of Girard-Perregaux are based on ETA movements, others aren't. Okay, so let's take a look at what we have here. It's called the Caliber A&S 6008. Citizen watches they really very much want to have Arnold & Son as well as Girard-Perregaux be identified with, and everything to be Swiss. All right, that's very important to them. In fact, Citizen came out with a new watch that's one of their sort of a new prestige line of watches with movements by Girard-Perregaux, just because they say, okay, we have Swiss movements in our watches, even though the Japanese are very good at making watch movements. Okay, so this is the deal. Now this thing is listed for $21,100, and it's a lot. But yeah, you can. I found this one for 6,800. That's a heck of a good deal. I mean, relative to the asking price. However, before I would do anything, I would see if I could find out a little more about certain problems that they may have had with the movement in that. So anyway, but that's one, and it's a really interesting looking watch in my opinion. Okay, moving right along. This next one is a watch brand that I come up with a lot, and this is a Parmesan Kalpa XL. Now they're almost out of these, right? They've been the price is extremely low right now. You can the original price of a Parmesan Kalpa XL was $10,600. And I found this one at a place called Gymnation for $3,895. Gymnation is one of those places where they got a lot of good buys. It's like Joma Shop and some of these other, they buy watches at a much lower rate that they can't sell otherwise, and they sell them to us collectors at a much improved rate. And the Parmesan, I have one of these watches. They're great watches. I mean, but they're not very popular. I mean, the quality is very good, high horology quality. In fact, Kerry Wooten-Lannen was asked what is the best watch under $10,000. And at the time, and still today, you can find like one or two that are high 9,000s. And he said it was Parmesan, and yeah, I think he's right. Okay, so this is another one. Now, there aren't very many of these left, and you have to look around. But this one I found was, like I said, $38.95. I have one of my own. It's a great watch. Okay, another one. Now, last time I talked about Rolex. I found a really good deal I thought on a Rolex, and another one on a Zenith. Okay, so I talked about those two strong horology watches. And today, what I want to suggest is you can find some very, very good buys with the Omega DeVille. If you're an Omega fan, chances are it's something like a Seamaster or one of the Man on the Moon or one of those very popular Omega watches. Now these two, the part of the DeVille line, they're more what I would call an office watch. And by an office watch, I mean you kind of think a guy's got a job, he's wearing a coat and tie, or at least something a little more than blue jeans and a work shirt. And what the Omega DeVille has, to me, it's sort of it's a move. It's not a sports watch, and it's not a high horology watch, but it's like a good everyday solid watch. Now, the two here that I'm looking at, one is called the DeVille Prestige, and it has a caliber 2500 in it by Omega, which has an ETA 2892A2 base. So, in effect, it's running on an ETA. Not that ETAs are bad, because I don't think they are. The only thing I haven't liked about ETAs is an ETA. It's about some watch companies that charge you high horology prices that stick in an ETA and don't tell you about it. Okay, now these watches have a list price of $3,500. On the Prestige, and the price that I found it at was $2,242. And I like it. I like the looks. And by the way, too, both of these prices are based on having a steel bracelet. So, okay. Now, the other one that I found that I liked was also part of the DeVille line. Is called the DeVille Hour Vision. And what I liked about this, now the caliber 8900 that it has is an in-house actual made everything by Omega. It's not based on an ETA. And the price though is significantly higher. It's 74.50. Now, both of these watches have a coaxial escapement. Now, this is the one that George Daniels invented, and it's supposed to give you better life for your watch, fewer time between repairs and service and so forth. So coaxial escapement is really a cool thing in a watch. And here too, both of them have it. By the way, I think if anybody looking at an Omega, you should make sure that they have the coaxial escapement. Some of the older ones don't. And so I was careful on this. Now this one sells for $74,450. It's 41 millimeters instead of 39.5 like the Prestige is. And it's a little nicer, and it's called a master chronometer. The other one is just called a chronometer. So this is a little nicer watch, but it costs almost literally twice as much, okay? And then the discounted ones are the same thing. They're also twice as much, but this one lists for $74.50, but you can find them I found one for $51.36. Okay, now, H. Moser, yeah, I'm wearing my H. Moser Henry double hairspring. First of all, let me talk about the one. This is a Venture Small Seconds 18 karat rose gold manual wine. Now, this is high exceptional horology. These watches are just amazing, but they're not very popular. A lot of people criticize the marketing. Some think that the sort of the wise guy CEO who does is responsible for a lot of the advertising, doesn't do a very good job. That shouldn't matter. It doesn't matter to me a bit. What matters is that these are such good watches. They don't hold their value, at least at this time, at all. And there's a bunch of strange things that happen. Now let's take a look at that Venture Small Seconds 18 karat rose gold. Now, that's a beautiful dress watch. It really is. 19,500. It's rose gold, 18 karat. But this one I found for 9,167, and that's it's about less than half price. Okay, so that's a very good deal. Brand new watch. By the way, all of the ones we're looking at today are brand new. Now, the one that I have, I just love. I wear it all the time, and it's the one watch that more watchmakers really want to look at, and that's because it has a double hairspring. And what the double hairspring does is that goes like this, and so the center pivot point stays the same, which provides for more consistent running, which is higher accuracy. This thing is great for accuracy. Now, there are some left, okay, out in the world. Originally, they were $29,000. Now, the same place where I found a really good buy on the Parmesan are selling this watch for $23,200. And to me, it's worth it. It's worth it at $29,000 because it's so unique and so well built. But there's a guy that you know from what's his name? Federico. Federico talks watches. Federico has a watch company that they sell watches called Del Rey Watches. And he's got one of these advertised for $9,999, but in fact, he changed it to $9,000. And so this particular one, it's a gorgeous watch. It's in gold with it's either black or dark brown dial on it for $9,000. It just is a great price on these. like I said, now, just a quick story about these. I have no intention of ever selling this watch or trading it in, so I don't care what that happens with the prices. But one thing that did happen is sort of interesting. I wrote to H. Moser and said, well, how come you guys aren't making the Henry double hairspring? This is an incredible watch. And they said the engineering costs were just so high that they couldn't do it. I mean, it was just, I mean, the engineering feat of having the double hairspring and everything they had to do just was too much. So what I said, what they had, the reason I asked them is that I noticed that they have this watch called the Swiss Alps watch, which is a sort of a squarish, looks like an apple-shaped watch, that they used to have the double hairspring, but they quit putting it in it, and that was why I asked about that. Then they said, well, they're going to have, I think, 20 a year, something like that, a limited number with a double hairspring, and they're going to sell them for $32,000. Okay, so I thought, oh, that's great. But anyway, so I got a heck of a buy on this one too. But like I said, there aren't that many left. But you can find them every now and then. Some places like Gymnasium are charging out the yin yang for them, and if they can get it, more power to them. I got mine, so I don't care what they charge. But like I said, there's a heck of a good deal that Del Rey has right now on one. So this is, in other places you can find them too. They're really fantastic watches. Okay, now this next one, a friend of mine suggested this, and boy was he ever right. The Piaget Polo S. This is one of those interesting watches with an interesting movement. It has a Piaget 1110P blue is how they describe it. Now this is based on a Cartier 1904-PS. It's a 4 hertz, 28,800 vibration per hour, which is pretty common. The watch is 42 millimeter steel. I tell you, there's someone who's going to say to you, boy, they ripped off the Nautilus or they ripped off the Aquanaut or something like that. And to some extent, it's got certain features like that. For all I know, Genta came around and did it. He was using the same thing in a lot of places. Doesn't matter. It's a great looking watch. It's a great price. These watches, oh yeah, I'll tell you about the manufacturer in a second. This one lists for $8,100, but I found it brand new, $6,480. So it's another one that you can find a really good deal on. Now, the movement, both Cartier and Piaget are owned by the Richemont Group, and the Richemont Group have this thing called Manufacture Horloger Valfrier, and they're the ones that are making the certain movements for the companies that they own. The Vacheron Constantin 56, their entry-level version, was also part of this, the number of watch movements that had the base on the Cartier 1904 PS, which may sound like ironic. Cartier, they use ETAs and everything else. Well, they also had an award-winning watchmaker for them, and she was the one, I think, who worked with the group who made this particular movement. So anyway, this is a great deal, I think. And, if you tried to buy, if you like that look, and you tried to buy a Aquanaut or a Nautilus, you got to wait, there's a big long waiting list. And this one is a much better buy, in my opinion. But that's me, okay? All right, so let's go on. This next one, Girard-Perregaux is a brand I've always liked. I've always had a soft spot for it. Maybe it was one of my first high horology watches was an overseas. It had a reworked Girard-Perregaux movement in it. Now, there was a line of of watches they had called the Seahawk. There was a Seahawk, there was a Seahawk 2. And this one I found was they're no longer in production. This is different than the ones that are still in production. But this is a sort of a cool looking diver. It's got a solid back, and you can take it down to 1,000 meters. And so I don't know anyone who's going to go down that far. But it's got a power reserve indicator. It's sort of got about 130. It's got a little date window, and but it's an actual diver. In other words, this is something that if you're into diving, or you like watches to, I don't know, if you fall into mud puddles with, this is a good solid watch, and it had been $11,000 originally. It's $54.95. I think it's a great deal. I really do. I think this was at Shop Worn where I found that. A lot of things I found are at Shop Worn and Joma Shop and Gym Nation. That one at Gym Nation, I was really surprised that they still want $23,000, and they had this other great deal on this other watch. Okay, the final watch I'm going to take a look at. Somehow I think we may have talked about this when I was talking about go through the original, and this is a Senator hand date. The list price on this is $63.95. It's a good price at $63.95, but I found them for this one. I found for $41.55. Stainless steel, 40 millimeter caliber, in-house caliber, $39.58. It's got small seconds, a second stop. By the way, too, just in case you didn't know, what a second stop is, it's the same thing as hacking. When you pull it out to set the time, everything stops, and then it won't start again until you push it in. And so if you want to synchronize your watch with someone else, you wait until the second hand is up to the 60, you pull out the crown, and then you, like that. Okay, the hand date simply refers to that little, that second small, second subdial, and it's got 31 numbers in it. It knows it for the dates, and the little hand tells you what day it is. That's why it's called the hand date. It's called the Senator hand date. Neat watch. Okay, well, been going on for a while on these, but anyway, as always, I would very much like to hear your comments on this. Other watches you think are a great deal. And of course, as always, this is an invitation to subscribe. And until Sunday, when we're going to have a collection re-review with new watches that have been added to another collection, this is Bill Sanders for Watch Art Sci, the art and science of watch collection.